At this stage of the game, I begin to assemble the actual interior apron of the table. Now I've already cut all the pieces, sanded them, and made sure that they will fit quite nicely. The next step is simply to insert them, which sometimes takes a little bit of work since everything is fitting quite tightly. I don't use any glue on the interior apron, mainly because I don't want to run the risk of having it be stuck if I do need to open it back up to do anything. Once everything's in place, I use my nail gun once again, go around the table, nailing it through the face of the apron and into the support pieces that I've already placed behind it, as you can see. I've also gone ahead and shortened the corner blocks, which I think in the end was a good decision. To attach those, I simply glued them in place. They'll be simple enough to remove if I need to. They're just glued to the bottom and not actually to the sides. And there you have it. The basic idea is done. What remains is a few more details on the outside, specifically the corner support brackets on the outside of the table, which I will be showing you how I made those coming up right now. Another aspect of this project was to repair some of the original finishings to the table. One such part that was missing, two of them actually were missing, are these little corner pieces, which I have already traced out on here. Basically, I guess they're supposed to look as though they're supports for the legs. They really don't do a whole lot, but I guess they do provide a little bit of support. But like I said, two of them were missing always. They're rather simple in design, and they have a little, I don't know, shape on them, embedded in them. So I'm going to try to carve that out as well. Pretty basic, but we'll see how it comes out. So to do that, poster board, traced it. Going to cut out my template, and then trace that onto probably a piece of 1x4 and cut it out from there. So let's go. With a sharp knife in hand, I begin to cut out my template from the poster board, being careful, of course, not to cut my own finger, which I've done a few times, and I don't recommend it to anyone. Wasn't a very difficult thing to cut out, but I think my blade probably could have been a little sharper to speed things up. Once I get it all cut out, I then take my piece and place it on the 1x4, trace it out with a pencil, and then get over to the jigsaw and cut it out. Here we have the first one made. As you can see, not a very complex shape. Still need to do the sanding on it to get the rough edges off, but it matches what's on there pretty damn well. Yeah, I think I need to make two more. Actually, I do need to make two more of these, 3 altogether. My biggest issue is probably going to be matching-wise is the stain. The rest of the table has I guess you'd say a honey stain on it. These are going to be stained for the first time with the new stain. So I'm concerned they may not look the same. If I can, I'm going to take off the old ones, put them together, and put these together so that maybe the difference isn't quite as noticeable. If I had a stain that I felt confident I could match to that, I'd go ahead and stain it, let it dry, then coat it with the new stuff, just to kind of give it a chance of matching. But that may not be possible, so we'll kind of experiment with it and see what we get. I've finished cutting out my corner braces, and I actually went ahead and did 4 of them instead of 3. The reason for that was to kind of try to compensate for that difference in staining thing I was talking about earlier. This way, the 2 short ends of the table will have matching corner pieces that will look the same stain. The long side of the table, however, there will be a matching set there. So I just have to take off one of the original ones and put 4 new ones in. Thus, if there is any difference, it's not going to be as noticeable by being on the same side. So the next step is to carve out the tiny little bit of detail that's on it. From this, if you can see that, there's just a small geometric shape, really. So I'm going to use the Dremel to carve that out. It really doesn't have to be carved out very much, just enough that when you run your fingernail over it, it goes into it, and you can see that it's there from, a distance.
So here I begin to use my Dremel to carve out the geometric shape on my corner braces. I chose a cutoff wheel simply because it was the right thickness to create that effect that I wanted, or at least I thought. The more I used it, the more I found I just didn't have enough control over it to effectively do what I wanted to do. So I switched over to this small grinding bit. It has a small ball on the end, thinking it would give me a little better control. It didn't really. It was better, certainly, but it still wasn't achieving what I wanted. I had a couple things going against me during all this, not having the right kind of bit, and also, as you can see, my Dremel kept dying. The reason it kept dying is because the battery doesn't quite attach properly for some unknown reason. It's always been this way, and I just always have to fight it. So the vibration and me pushing down on it, it pops the battery up. I just need to get a new one. I might use it more if, the battery stayed in. So it's one of those kind of double-edged swords. Anyway, I do end up finding a better way of doing the others, but I did go ahead and finish this one out with the Dremel anyway.
What I ended up doing was just using a chisel and a flathead screwdriver to kind of create the impression into the wood, thus creating the decoration. Upon comparing it to the others, I think it's pretty close, and in fact that may have been how they did the original ones, so who knows. Next step is to get the one old one removed, get the new ones on there, and continue to prep for staining.
This is after just getting the first coat of the poly shades on. As you can see, the original part of the table did take the coating a bit darker, which I expected, and the new wood is a little lighter. So I will continue to go over that to try to even it out, but so far I'm very happy with how it's looking.
Welcome back. This is sort of a final cap on the whole project. I have finished the table, it's in place, and it's being used, and I will show you all that here in just a few minutes. First, though, I want to talk about some of the things that I didn't shoot, that you won't see in the actual film, and things that I might do differently if I were to do this project again in the future. So, let's get started with that. The first thing I want to address is how I managed the stain, or I should say the stain, for the whole project. I didn't end up videoing this just because it was a messy process, and being out here in a cold shop trying to stain, time is of the essence, so I didn't have time to set shots, stain, etc., and not have it look horrible. So, I went ahead and just did it, and I'll tell you about it. I used a product by Minwax called Poly Shades. Now, if you go online, you'll find a lot of hate about this product. Basically, if you're trying to stain, I use stain in quotations, new wood with this product, it's not going to work very well unless you just are really good at staining. The product really is designed to go over an existing stain, thus meaning you don't have to remove the old stain completely. So, for my purposes, 90% of this project was a restain. So I decided to go with that product. It then would also have the polyurethane already built into it, so it would save me a step to some degree. So I used the poly shades over the old part of the table. Worked perfect. The color was great. Did maybe 3 coats altogether. Got a really nice dark finish. Looked great. Time came for the interior part, which of course was all new wood. That looked a little different, but after a few coats of the product, it kind of looked the same. Not identical, not identical, but it looked well enough for the whole project to be able to say, yeah, this is how it's supposed to be. So I was happy with it. If I were to do it again, I would probably spray it on. I do have the equipment to do that. I chose not to for a couple of reasons. One, it really doesn't get over 40 degrees in my shop right now, even when I have the heat running with the temperatures I'm getting outside. So that's really not ideal for spraying on anything. And I just had a feeling it would end up making a bigger mess trying to do it by thinning it and etc. But certainly that is an option that you should consider. So I do end up with a little bit of brush marks here and there. I did use a very fine brush made specifically for oil-based products, but even with that and the cold temperatures, I do have a few streaks here or there. I'm okay with that because the whole table is kind of a rustic looking table. It's got gouges and parts of it missing. Come on. I can't make it look too great. So it kind of fits the whole theme. But we'll see that here in a minute. The next part I want to address is the actual tabletop. Now, originally I'd planned to stain the tabletop the same as the rest of the table. But once I had the sides all done and the rest of the old table done, I put the wood insert in, and I liked the contrast that I got from the very light wood to the dark stain. So I decided I wanted to do something different to the tabletop that wasn't the same. Maybe a lighter stain, maybe a paint. I wasn't sure. So I kind of looked around the aisles of my home improvement store and found a product that I thought would be awesome. Basically, it's what's the brand? It's Rust-Oleum copper, hammered copper, and it comes in a small metal container. You paint it on, it develops that sort of hammered metal look by separating itself. So it has kind of an orangish tint to it, and again, you'll see that here in the upcoming shots. The product is really a great product, but I'd never used the actual paint-on version of this before. I have some of the Rust-Oleum spray-on hammered metal effect stuff, and it works pretty good. The paint-on works a little differently. You have to get it on thick. If you don't get it on thick, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do and separate, and it just looks like, you know, kind of orange, flaky paint on wood. So, after getting sufficiently thick amounts of the paint on there, finally got the look I was going for, and, well, turned out being very happy with it. The downside of it is, I underestimated the amount of time it would take for the paint to fully cure. I let it set without putting anything on it for about 2 days, thinking that would be sufficient. No. After like 3 days, we sat a trivet on the table and had a product on top of the trivet. And then after I took the trivet off, the little feet had left imprints in the paint. So again, because you have to put the paint on thick, it takes a long time to cure. I wasn't too concerned about it. It was my first attempt at that tabletop, and since it's an insert that can be removed, I can always redo it. Heck, I can make other inserts for it if I want to, and, you know, just swap them out randomly if I so choose. So keep that in mind. The product probably would have cured in 2 days if I'd had normal outside temperatures during the spring or summer, but being cold and not heated out here, it just didn't have a chance to properly set up. So keep that in mind. But again, I'm overall happy with how the whole thing turned out. So again, we'll see that here in a moment. So in closing, how did I feel about the project? Well, I felt pretty good. I premiered it at a game night a couple weeks ago, and everyone liked it. I think the only real downside to the project and to the table was the fact that you don't have room to sit your books on it. But we sort of made a way around that. We have little tables. I've mentioned before, we sometimes use chairs. So I'm thinking about making little side tables that kind of accompany the table. So you just pull those out, and boom, there you go. Overall, went really well. We didn't actually get a lot of combat in with it, but we should coming up, and everyone really seemed to like it, so that made me happy too. The spring mechanism worked, and it now has a nice home in my kitchen, and it looks pretty good, I think. So, here we go. I'll end out the video with the last few shots of everything, beauty shots if you will. And if you have any questions, please feel free to fire them down below in the comments or send me an email or however you want to do it, and I'd be happy to get back with you as soon as I can. So, thanks for watching this series. I hope you've enjoyed it, and well, I hope to make a few more in the future and maybe do some other fun things here in my shop and get those videos out there. So, again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please like the video and carry on. I'll see you next time.